if possible, to talk to you about that. Is now a good time, or would
You can go ahead and do that.
Okay. What happened there was we received a citizen complaint from...
Me.
I'm sorry?
I'm the one who called, asked the police to come.
No. I received a citizen complaint from Ms. Kent.
Oh, yes.
Who was apparently at a hearing there. And,
well, sort of. Mm-hmm.
Okay. She's complaining about the officer who responded.
About the officer?
Yeah.
Oh, that's her. I mean, go ahead.
Okay. She's complaining that the officer basically threw her out of a meeting before it started, and the officer was rude and generally mean to her.
The police officer?
Mm-hmm. Officer Carl Booth. And apparently later her husband, Mr. James Whitaker, called and wanted to add another officer to the complaint.
The other man? There were two officers there. Was he the one he was adding?
Yeah, Officer Becker.
I don't know which was which.
Okay.
But in my opinion, they bent over backwards to be nice to them. The officers bent over backwards to be nice to Mrs. Kent and her husband, Mr. Whitaker.
Okay. Well, can we back up just a little bit and tell me what's your role there?
I'm the hearing officer.
Okay. What was going on? What kind of hearing was this? What was happening?
It's a special education hearing under IDEA. IDEA. Yes, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act.
Uh-huh.
And the lady whose adopted son, who's her grandson's, is the child with disability, is Burma Dalton.
Okay.
And Mrs. Kent was acting as her advocate.
An advocate for the woman who had custody of the child. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes. Mrs. Kent, yes, and Mrs. Kent and Mr. Whitaker have. You could talk to. Is Gazelle Johnson on your list to call?
No, the only names I have are you and Mary I.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Gazelle Johnson is the attorney for the Columbus Public Schools. She's dealt, and Mary I might be able to give you the same kind of information.
Okay, Ms. Johnson, Gazelle, is that?
Gazelle Johnson, right. Mm-hmm.
Could you give me a spelling on her first name?
Giselle. And she's the attorney. Mm-hmm. Let's see, her number, let's see if I have that here for you. 365-5673.
Okay. Okay, so there was a hearing?
Right, correct. The Columbus Schools wants to give tutoring to Mrs. Dalton's son.
Okay.
And what it is, in my opinion, at any rate, Gazelle Johnson has had some issues with Kennedy Kent had issues with the Columbus schools that aren't even related to this child. She used to work there. They fired her, and she sued them.
Okay.
And since then, she's, tries to make trouble for them.
What does she sue the school for?
Employment discrimination.
Okay.
But that's what I'm told by Gazelle. You need to ask Gazelle that one.
Okay.
So the situation is that she has decided that now she'll be an advocate for disabled students, and she's gotten about a half a dozen of them only in the Columbus schools to advocate for.
Okay.
And I think, typically what she does, you can ask Gazelle this one, is file these things and then dismiss them at the last minute. But this time, this one was different. She filed it, she dismissed hers, and but the district had cross-filed. So we went forward on the district's, and that's why this one was going forward.
Okay, Kennedy Kent had filed...
Mm-hmm. On behalf of this student.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. It's questionable whether or not, she's actually even practicing law without a license.
Okay.
The court reporter, I want to say, we had a court reporter, and the court reporter has a tape of the whole thing.
Really?
Yes, and she did a transcript. We had the transcript also, but in order to really appreciate Kennedy Kent, what you have to do is hear it. Because what her purpose was to disrupt the hearing and not allow the hearing to go forward. And she left a message on my voicemail. I'd be happy to play it for you because I left it on there.
Okay.
Would you like me to pull it up right now?
Well,
I'm on my cell phone, so I could do it, and you can actually hear it. Where she says to me, if the hearing goes forward, there's going to be trouble.
okay. Let's back up just a little bit. I do want to hear that, but you need to bring.
I knew she would do something. I knew she'd do something, and it really surprises me that she would do something against the officers because I thought she was going to go after me.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to be her target.
Well.
But she's chosen the officers. I'm surprised because they were being so nice, especially the one fellow who was trying to mediate it. Really.
Okay.
Really bending over backwards to be nice.
And you don't know which officer that was?
Well, that was the black officer.
Okay.
I don't know which one. Is that Booth?
Well,
Is that the main one she criticized?
Well, that was the one she complained on. Then her husband, Mr. Whitaker, called back later to add Officer Becker, who's a white officer.
White guy. Yeah. I didn't know their names, but the black officer really took an active role in it. I mean, he really took an active role trying to mediate it. He was being calm, and he was saying, just calm down. We're going to try. We can, try to resolve it. That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
He was being very nice. Very nice. Very nice. He took an active role in trying and spent much more time than you would expect, trying to get them to calm down and participate.
Okay.
I should mention that Mrs. Chapman's, this is what I've been told, Mrs. Chapman's granddaughter is dating Mrs. Kennedy Kent's son.
Who's Mrs. Chapman's?
I'm sorry, I'm looking at Chapman right here. That's another case. Mrs. Dalton. Mrs. Dalton's daughter.
Okay, all right, hold on. Let's stop a minute.
All right.
We're gonna have to back up and bring me up to speed on what's going on and how things work there. All right.
Okay.
Mrs. Dalton has custody of a grandson. Is that correct?
Yes, and his name is Frank Mitchell.
Okay. And I believe you told me that the school wants to give Frank tutoring.
Right.
Okay. Now, why are we having a hearing?
Mrs. Kennedy Kent advised Mrs. Dalton not to agree to it.
Okay. So for some reason, Mrs. Kennedy Kent objects to tutoring?
Objects to sign up for the tutoring. Recommending to her, for lack of a better word, I use the word client, that she not go forward with it. Yeah, not have the tutoring. Oh, actually, I should mention to you too. Are you ready for this one?
Why somebody would not want tutoring?
Because of this, they're trying to make, in my opinion, trouble for the Columbus schools. In other words, anything that Columbus wants to do, Mrs. Kennedy Kent is against.
Okay.
And this hearing had been going on since November. The hearing process since the district initially asked to give the tutoring in November. So going on since November. Mrs. Dalton's had 3 lawyers, and they've all left. And the night before the hearing was to start.
Why is Mrs. Dalton retained lawyers to prevent her son or her grandson from being tutored?
You'll have to ask them that question.
Did she present an argument, I don't want tutoring because?
Nope, won't say.
All right.
Getting the picture now?
Yeah. Okay, I'm with you.
And they've had 3 lawyers, and the latest one, I think, it quit the day of the hearing, and I've only had this case a month. The other hearing officer was another hearing officer, and he quit. And the reason he quit was that Mrs. Kennedy Kent went to his house at 10:30 at night. And he was afraid, and he quit.
Okay.
And since Mrs. Kennedy Kent's done that, the Department of Education is requiring all the hearing officers to use post office boxes.
Wow.
And the Department of Education was considering what they were going to do about all this. And I don't know if they've made up their minds yet. And I could give you the contact person there.
When you say Department of Education, are you talking the state level? Or
Yes, the state level.
Okay.
Yeah, but she's threatened to sue them before, so I don't know why that may be, why they haven't done anything. I'm surprised she didn't do anything about me. I'm waiting for that to come.
Well, I don't know. I mean, for all I know, she has. That's just out of my bailiwick. I don't know the officers.
The poor officers, they are totally innocent. So she files on everybody. No matter, I can't tell you how many complaints she's filed against the school district with the Department of Education.
Would you have access to that information?
I can give you the name of the person who would.
Yeah, go ahead.
He's Aaron Gregory. And his number is 752-1410. And he's the educational consultant there at the Department of Education. And if he's not the right person to talk to, he can give you the right person to handle it. So they have dealt with Mrs. Kennedy Kent a lot more than I have. So they've had extensive dealings with her, as has Gazelle Johnson. I can just tell you that those officers were very professional and very helpful.
Okay. Let's back up some more. I'm trying to ease into this like an old man into a bathtub.
Yeah, okay.
You have... Okay, so this has been going on for months before you were even involved. There was a hearing process.
Correct.
That was initiated by Ms. Dalton. She went through several lawyers.
No, it was initiated by the Columbus School District.
Okay. What... how does the Columbus School District initiate a hearing process? Is it to compel tutoring?
Yes, with the Department of Education.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Do you work for State Department of Education or Columbus Schools?
I'm an independent contractor.
Okay.
I'm a lawyer. They hire me for
Kind of like
this
an
purpose.
arbitrator, that kind of thing?
Yes, that's exactly right. I'm the arbitrator.
Okay. All right. So the school, and correct me if I'm mistaken, at some point in the past, the school said Frank needs tutoring. Ms.
Correct.
Dalton says no.
Correct. At one point in time, she said yes, and Kennedy Kent apparently told her, tear it up.
Okay. So Kennedy Kent has been involved since the beginning. You said Ms. Dalton went through several lawyers, but
right, but it's really Kennedy Kent. Right, Kennedy Kent paid for her lawyers. She says. By the way, Kennedy
Kent
Kent
paid for this. Kent.
Kennedy Kent?
Right.
No, I don't think so. She's doing this voluntarily.
And she's paying for lawyers.
She paid for at least one of them. Right, she says $3,000.
She must really, really not like the schools.
That would be true.
Okay.
That would be true.
All right, so this is...
And plus, she's I don't repeat this, crazy.
Okay.
She says she has a disability.
Okay.
I think that might have been the basis of the employment suit.
Oh, okay. Do you know what the disposition was of her lawsuit?
You will have to... she lost, is my understanding. You could ask Gazelle Johnson that.
Okay.
But when we were at the hearing, she kept screaming at me, I have a disability, I have a disability, I have a disability. And I said to her, what is your disability? And she said, it's a yelling disability.
A yelling?
I yell. Yes.
Okay.
It's on the tape.
All right. All right, let's back up some more.
So okay, I can give you lots of... I have an opinion. Yes.
Right. You're cutting to the chase, and I'm still trying to get to the starting block here.
All right.
It's been a month-long process. She's gone through several lawyers.
The several lawyer processes since November.
Since November. Okay. There was another hearing officer prior to you being brought in.
Yes, Michael Lattice is his name.
Okay. And he quit after being visited at home late at night by Kennedy Kent. Is that correct?
Correct.
And since then...
And her husband, Mr. Whitaker, is my understanding. I can give you his number.
Okay. What's his name again?
You want it?
Sure.
Michael Lattis, Latas. He's another hearing officer, the one who had it for the longest period of time. You know, they just brought me in, you know, because you know, they needed somebody else at the last minute. I'm looking for his information here. And the other, let's see. Wait a minute, I'm looking through my notes for his. I have my conversations with him, but I need one that has his, yeah. So she went after the officers, huh?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you what, I can't find his number, but Aaron Gregory would have it. Aaron Gregory has it.
Okay. All right. So he quit as hearing officer.
He quit.
After her visit to him, there was a new policy. The
A new hearing officer. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Were you the next hearing officer?
Yes, and a new policy as well.
And the policy was you had to use post office boxes.
Right.
Okay. To prevent her from showing up again.
Well, to prevent something like this from happening again.
Okay.
Correct. I'm looking for his. Oops, crash. I'm looking for the stuff here. Wait a minute. Looking for his information. I've got his file here. So would you like the court reporter's name and number?
Sure.
It's Michelle Habig, MICHELLEHABIG. She is the court reporter with Anderson's Reporting. And her number is 3260177. So here's, wait a minute.
Was she, the contact with the officers, was that, would that have been on record? Would that be on her tape also?
Yes. Almost every, word of it on her tape, and she also transcribed it.
Okay.
So that would be a good thing to listen to.
Yeah. Do you have a copy of the transcript?
No. Gazelle might have one by now, though, Gazelle Johnson.
Okay.
Here's Michael Lattis' number.
Okay.
481-3229, his office number.
Okay. All right. So you were brought in as a new hearing officer.
Correct, after he quit.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And was this your first hearing on the case? This one
Yes.
from last week?
Yeah, yes, right. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It was the first one that anybody's held on the case.
Okay. Now, you said that in the past, Kennedy Kent had requested hearings and then withdrawn the request at the last minute.
Right, and I've been told that. So I've been told by Gazelle Johnson.
Okay. So, had you had any contact with Kennedy Kent prior to her phone call to you telling you not to go forward with the hearing?
Yes, the same sort of thing.
Okay.
The same sort. She's very difficult to deal with, and I had it.
What was your first contact with her?
Well, actually, I had another hearing where she was a participant, and that's been over, I think, over a year ago. But you mean my first contact with her on this case?
Well, what about last year's hearing?
The same sort of thing. It's the same sort of thing.
Okay.
She's got issues with the Columbus School District, and basically this is her vehicle to express them, in my opinion.
Okay. All right. So on this case, your first contact was this phone call to you? Is that right?
No, I've had. Now this is the one I left on the recorder because this is the one where she left a threat.
Okay. Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and play that if you could?
Sure. I'm pulling it up now.
Sure.
She complains. This is pretty typical. Can you hear that?
No.
We have not heard from you. We need you to give us a call at 471-4616, back to 11:40. We understand what's going on. You stated that just two of us, we talked on May 2nd, that May 11th would be exchange of some type of Giselle Johnson would then give us some documentation. As I stated to you in the letter, they have not given us all the records. You heard on the phone when I specifically asked Mary I for the least restricted page, the 2004-2005 IEP, which is missing. She has not mailed that. She even left a message saying that she would, and she has not state mailed. We do not have all the documentation. That is her right. You need to give us a call because you cannot possibly mean that the dates are going to stay the same from your April 27, 2005 letter, as Molly Forster left a message. So we don't know what's going on because this is different from what you said to us over the phone. So we have not heard from you. Mrs. Dawson has not heard from you. So you need to give us a call at 471-4616. And you can see in that letter, she does give you permission, even though you knew she already gave me permission. So you need to give us a call, and you need to give us a call before tomorrow, because we're going to have a very serious problem if we walk up there at 9:30 and there's a hearing going on. So you need to give Mrs. Dawson and this kid a call, and you need to call this number and quit trying to coerce. Do not try to coerce, and call the 274 number. Mrs. Dawson, you need to call the 471-4616 number, and I will connect her. Bye-bye.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, I heard it kind of in syllables. I did hear we're going to have big problems if we walk up there at 9:30 tomorrow and there's a hearing coming up.
Right. There you go. You can't believe a word those people say.
Now she's complaining about some documents that she hasn't been given.
That's her excuse
Oh, okay.
for not having it. If you get the entire transcript of the whole hearing, you'll say that they asked for documents on multiple occasions, get them on multiple occasions, copies of the same documents, and then say they don't have them, and as many as 5 or 6 times a week.
Oh, okay.
It's a harassment technique. That's what they were saying to the officers over and over. We didn't get them, and then Columbus is saying, we gave them to them over and over again. This is their excuse. They just want to drag it out and drag it out and drag it out, so that they can continue to cause more havoc, in my opinion.
Why did, excuse me, when was this phone message, this email or voicemail that she just left you?
It was like the day before.
The day before?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it was May 11th was the hearing, right?
Right. So it would have been
May 10th.
I believe it was the 10th. Right. Mm-hmm. I believe. I think I probably have it written down somewhere, but
Okay, so she left that message on or about
my voicemail. Mm-hmm.
And then on May 11th,
she started in screaming.
Okay, what happened? Let's take it from the top on May 11th at this meeting.
Right.
Who was in the room first? You? Who else?
Giselle Johnson and I were in the room, and also Mary I and the court reporter.
Okay. All right, and then
we were supposed to have security there.
Okay.
They didn't have security there. So security, she started it at 9:30, screaming. We want to start the hearing, screaming at the top of her lungs. So finally,
so at 9:30 she walks
yes,
in screaming.
She and her husband's videotaping.
Her husband's videotaping.
Oh yeah, he's got a videotape.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And she starts off screaming.
Screaming.
All right, what is she screaming?
She doesn't want the hearing to go forward. She doesn't have her documents.
Okay. Just the same thing over and over again?
Over and over again.
Okay.
Yeah. And other things as well, which that would be on either the court reporter's transcript or on the tape,
Okay.
the court reporter's tape, over and over. So finally, the security gets there. He tries to escort them out, I'm offering them.
Now, this is somebody from the school security?
Yes, school security. Now, Mrs. Dalton, the adoptive mother of this son, she's fine, and they've got the granddaughter, whose name is Kenesha. They were fine. They could have stayed. It's Kennedy Kent and Whitaker. Whitaker doesn't say too much, but Whitaker is videotaping, and by the way, he also steals the exhibits. Some of the exhibits.
What
yes.
are the exhibits?
Mm-hmm. They had exhibits that they had presented, which were now part of the record, and he took them.
What are they, documents?
Yeah, he took them. And I asked him not to do it, and he took them. And I'm not going to make a fuss, but he's got them. So his exhibits that they had originally turned in, he took back. So, and the department was thinking about filing theft charges against him.
Mm-hmm.
But so you can ask Aaron Gregory what they decided to do about that. I'm assuming that they didn't decide. I thought they should ban her from future hearings. Frankly,
okay.
She and her husband. But at any rate, so I called Mary I also called for the police, but I called also when the security officer said, "Let's go, ma'am," and he put his hand on her arm, and she's screaming, and she's like you're going to take your hand off, you're hurting me, or something like that, So then I said, okay, we got a threat of violence going on here. Actually, I thought she was going to try and trounce him, so that's when I called the Columbus police, 911.
What did she say to the security officer that was threatening?
You mean the one, something about, he had his hands on her.
Mm-hmm.
Take your hands on, she was making a big fuss about he was manhandling her, he was doing something to her, So he just didn't do anything anymore.
Okay.
So did she complain about him too?
Not to me.
Huh.
I haven't spoken with her yet. You're the first person I've spoken to.
We just don't believe a word that comes out of her mouth.
Okay. All right, so that's when you call the police.
I call the police.
Okay.
Right.
And what happens while you're waiting for the police to show up?
Screaming and yelling.
Okay. Any threats to anyone?
No.
Okay. And who shows up first, the white officer or the black officer?
They were together. As far as I know, they came in together.
Okay. And go ahead and tell me about what happened when the officers got there.
They tried to calm things down, especially the black officer.
Mm-hmm.
Tried to calm things down.
Okay, and how's she responding?
They had her leave the room. Then when she left the room, things did calm down, but she was yelling from the hall.
Okay, is she out in the hall with the officers?
Nope, they're in the room.
Okay.
I think kind of moving back and forth, basically.
So the officer stayed in the room, and she went out in the hall and continued to yell?
For a while, yeah. And her husband continued to videotape. And then they had somebody else who came, and he was videotaping, too.
Okay. Do you know who this other person was?
No. Mary I asked that they wouldn't give his name.
Okay.
They were yelling at the court reporter. I mean, she could tell you what they yelled at her.
Okay. Okay, did the officers stay there for the whole meeting?
No. They stayed, I think they were there maybe a couple of hours. Well, the whole thing went on maybe a couple of hours, so they weren't there quite a couple of hours. They stayed, and finally what did it was, the fellow wanted to keep videotaping, and he's like standing 6 inches from you, And besides, we're only supposed to have one record of this, and that's the court reporter, so I asked that he not be allowed to videotape.
Mm-hmm.
And they refused, and then they said, "We're leaving! No, come on! Come on, Kenesha, we're leaving!" I said, these people could stay. They were Kenesha and her grandmother.
How old is Kenesha?
They're polite. 21.
Okay.
Or 20 or 21, something like that. College age. That now they're very much beholden to Mrs. Kennedy Kent. Because they have that family connection. And what Kenesha said was, I didn't have a coat, and she bought me a coat. They're very beholden financially,
Mm-hmm.
Dalton and Kenesha, to Kennedy Kent. But at any rate, they left, and after that, the officers, I'm assuming, made sure that they left the area, and then we went ahead and had the hearing.
Okay, so the officers were in the room. Kennedy Kent is in the hallway. You've got two fellas videotaping.
Right, and then she comes back in after a while.
Kent came back in?
Yes.
While the officers were there?
Yes.
Okay, and what happened when she came back in the room?
I think that they were trying to get things calmed down. She was just saying more of the same thing, you know.
About the documents she didn't get?
Documents she didn't get, and she, you know, she has a. I can't remember what else she was complaining about. She always has a number of complaints.
Okay. Do you remember specifically anything any officer told her or tried to say to her?
Calm down. We can't have you doing this. Oh, I remember some of the things. They were telling Mrs. Dalton that Miss Kennedy Kent probably didn't like this, that she needed a lawyer, that these people were not helping her, that they have their own agenda, they're practicing law without a license, you need your own lawyer. These people aren't here for your best interests. That's what the black officer was telling Mrs. Dalton, and that's probably what Kennedy Kent didn't like. He was telling her the truth.
What about the white officer? Do you know anything specifically he was saying?
He stayed in the background, pretty much. Now, the only thing that he did, he stood in front of the fellow with the videotape a time or two, and he was just, you know, he didn't take nearly the same active role as the other fellow. That's why Whitaker probably complained about him, because he stopped him from videotaping.
Okay.
That's what he didn't like about him, I'll betcha.
All right. So she came back in the room. The officers are still there. Now she's calmer now, is that right?
Yes, I'd say so.
Okay.
Things calmed down, but they are the way they are. I mean, those people are the way they are.
Did anything else happen after she came back in the room?
No, nothing worth, more, just, she's opinionated, she speaks quite loudly. She was determined that the hearing not go forward, and, so it went forward, it got done with it.
Okay. And then did she just leave? What happened at the end?
They left. She says, come on, Kenesha, we're leaving. Get out of here, come on.
Okay. And everybody left?
We're leaving. Everybody left.
And then the officers?
They all followed her.
And then the officers left?
They left too. They followed them out. So what would have happened in the parking lot, I couldn't tell you. But every time everything that I saw was exemplary.
Okay. Okay. At any time, did you see any officer be rude or discourteous to Ms. Kent or Mr. Whitaker?
Never.
All right. Well, I guess that'll do it for now. I still need to talk with her and Mr. Whitaker to find out what they have to say about the whole thing and what their complaint is. I just have, in very general terms, they're complaining that the officers were mean and rude and threw her out of the meeting. So.
The shoe's on the other foot. She was mean and rude.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll
enjoy your conversation with her.
Well, that's
I'm
fine.
just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Okay. Well, I'll touch base with some of these other folks you told me about.
Great. Aaron Gregory could tell you a lot, about their dealings. My dealings have been much more limited compared to theirs.
Okay.
And Molly Forrester is the person who handles the legal aspect of it.
All right. Well, I'll touch base with those folks.
Oh, good luck.
All right. Well, thanks for your time.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.